and welcome back to my channel. I'm so happy you're here today because I'll be talking about my favorite thriller and horror books that I've read so far this year. So far this year I've read already over 80 books, I believe, so it's pretty tough to narrow it down, but I have compiled a list for you guys, and ignore my voice. I know it is annoying right now because of allergies. My throat is, yeah, not that great, but let's get right into it because I have a lot of books to talk about. So the first group of books I want to talk about are some like graphic novels and some comic books. So I wanted to start off with Fangs. I read this at the very beginning of the year and I really liked this. It's like a like cutesy romance book, actually. It's like about a vampire and a werewolf who are dating, and it's very funny. I liked the humor. I know I heard some mixed things about this graphic novel, that, you know, the humor wasn't for them, but I thought it was really funny and cute. The next graphic novel I really liked is Through the Woods. This was a beautiful graphic novel. The artwork is so fantastic, and this is 5 different stories that kind of revolve around the woods. And the last story is my favorite, so let me know if you've read this and if you liked the last story. And the next graphic novel that I really liked this year was Tokyo Ghoul Volume 1. This is a different take on a vampire story. It's still like vampire-ish, but it's just very different. Our main character isn't turned the normal way, and he's not a full ghoul. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and I can't wait to read. Actually, I read like 3 or 4 of these because I owned the first volume and I borrowed the other volumes. And actually, funny story, I returned this to my local library and they like called me and was like, "Girl, you returned your own book." Wow. So yeah, if you see these at your local library or even any of the graphic novels that I mentioned, because they do get a bit pricey, I highly suggest borrowing them because they are a fun time. So the next books I want to talk about are my favorite thrillers that I've read so far this year, and starting with Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams. I've seen so many mixed reviews about this one, but I absolutely loved it. This felt very Hitchcockian. It is very, like, it feels like a small enclosed thriller, but it really isn't because it's taking place like on this bridge outside, but for some reason it feels very small and intimate with the characters, and it felt very intense, and I was very invested in Lena's story and her mission, and yeah, I absolutely loved it, and it was quite the page turner, and it just had like some wild plot twist, and that is like kind of the biggest complaint I think I see with this one, is the plot twist, but I loved it. But this is about a girl who is investigating her sister's suicide, and she's meeting the officer that found her sister's body on a hairpin bridge alone. This is like an abandoned bridge. It is closed to the public, and she just wants to talk to him, you know, because it's sus, right? But I highly suggest reading this one. I know it got a bunch of mixed reviews, bad reviews, but yeah, I really liked it. And the next book I want to talk about is The Couple Next Door by Sherry Lapina. I ended up listening to this one from Libby, and I think I listened to it in like 2.5 hours or something, because it just flew by, and it was so good, and I just kept finding stuff to do to be able to listen to the book, you know? When that happens, it is so great. But this is about a couple next door. Now, a couple goes to their next door neighbor's place, and they leave their baby, I think it's like a 6-month-old baby, at home. They have the baby monitor, and they keep going like every 30 minutes to go check on the baby. Well, wouldn't you know, the baby ends up missing. It felt very like Madeleine McCann vibes in it, and yeah, it just it it kept you on your seat. I really liked how this was done. It was multiple POVs, and every POV, it gave you a little bit of a twist, and there's a couple twists throughout this one, and I highly suggest if you are looking for a good domestic thriller, I would say this is by far one of the best that I've ever read. And the next thriller I want to talk about is The Jigsaw Man by Nadine Matheson. This is more on the procedural side, and it is upside down. This is on the procedural side of thrillers, and I would say this would go into the horror category because it is a serial killer thriller book, and we follow Angelica, and she has very bad PTSD from her experience with the Jigsaw Man, and now there is a copycat killer on the loose, so she is pulled back onto the case, and I think this portrayals PTSD very well. Like, you don't get that in a ton of procedurals that I've read portrayed as much as Angelica. Angelica is so well developed. The gore in this is so good, and the mind games I really liked. And yeah, I highly suggest if you like Silence of the Lambs, you will love this. And book 2 is coming out in July, and I'm so excited because it ends on such a cliffhanger. And yeah, I just want to be friends with Angelica, and I just know she wouldn't put up with me. And I made that joke on my Instagram, and I will always talk about it, and the author commented, no, Angelica would not put up with you. But yeah, highly suggest The Jigsaw Man. It is a perfect, I would say it's like a perfect procedural book. And the last thriller I want to talk about is kind of like a thriller that I read this year. That when I read it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is such a cliche. Everything is so tropey. Oh, but I love it. And that is Flicker in the Dark. This is such, like, it has all the tropes of a thriller, and it is great. So this is about a girl that is kind of sucked back into her hometown, and there's a serial killer on the loose, that her dad was actually like arrested for being a serial killer, and he's in prison, and like it is very, very tropey. It reminded me a lot of the girl in the window from The Woman Across the Street, that comedy show, the satire show on Netflix, and I think I watched that show before I read this one, and I was like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of that. But I still really liked it. It's very predictable and tropey, but it's just like fun. So I highly suggest if you are looking for just a thriller to hit all of those, check all those boxes for you, I highly suggest Flicker in the Dark. Okay, so getting into the horror, I have to talk about some Michael McDowell books, and I'm going to talk about them kind of quickly. So The Elementals was my first Michael McDowell book, and I absolutely loved it. It is like a great summer spooky book. Cold Moon Over Babylon, I read recently and absolutely loved it, and I've talked about it a lot over here, and this is same like Southern Gothic, great summer horror book, and yeah, he just captures like small towns, I think very well, or like family dynamics very well, and it creeped me out, and it has very startling and scary imagery in it. The next book I want to talk about is This Thing Between Us by Gus Marino. This is I thought it was like honestly like a supernatural grief horror book, and it does start off that way, but it actually takes quite a turn towards the middle and end, and it's more cosmic horror, and it is done so well in this. I listened to this one from Scribd, and I just could not stop listening to it, and it's very short, and the stuff that happens at the beginning is super creepy, and I was home alone when it was happening, and honestly you won't think of your Alexa the same. Next book I absolutely loved this year was Little Heaven by Nick Cutter. You guys, this is a long one, but it is so worth it. If you like cult stories, if you like very weird stuff happening in your horror books that kind of are very subtly sprinkled in throughout, you are gonna love Little Heaven. The book I borrowed from my library had illustrations in it, and it reminded me of Stephen King, and also like the character development reminded me a lot of Stephen King, and the writing. There's great action horror in this as well. It's very gory, it's weird, it's culty, it's 5 stars. It was magnificent. And Echo as well, I really enjoyed. I talked about this one pretty recently. I read it back in March. This is a cosmic horror book, and it is slow at times, but the way it's like building itself up, it becomes very effective. So this one is about a guy who ends up getting in a horrible mountain climbing accident, and it's like him and his boyfriend like dealing with that like traumatization of somebody getting injured, and like you taking care of them, and all of the psychological trauma, physical repercussions of that, but also it's a horror, cosmic horror to be adequate about it, and it is so creepy, and there's some very creepy cool imagery in this one, and yeah, I highly suggest if you're looking for survival horror as well. Survival horror mixed with cosmic horror. So the last book I'm going to talk about is an extreme horror book, and that is Billy Silver by Daniel Velope. You guys know I love this author, and this has Talia in it. This is actually the first book with Talia in it, and it is so great. This is a splatter punk extreme horror book. So it has all of the trigger warnings in this. It is so disgusting. I was gagging in it. But the imagery at the end, chef's kiss. It was so good. And yeah, I really, really liked it. So I ended up giving it like 5 stars. But it is not for everyone. And it definitely is not even for people who are just getting into extreme horror. Stay away from this one. Only experienced extreme horror people, please read Billy Silver, because it is so much fun. It's so gross, and Talia is amazing in it. So there you have it. I have some other awesome reads that I read this year, but they're more of like novellas and stuff. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys would like to see a separate video for my favorite horror novellas, because I've read a ton of those as well this year, and this video would be like years long, right? Now, let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? Are you intrigued to read any of these books? And you guys have a great day. Bye.